Do you think I'm a hypocrite? Now, as I dive into what's going on with me or what has gone on with me, I want to ask that you don't tell my pastor, that you don't tell my praise team leaders, because I don't want them looking at me funny. I don't want them, babying me. I really don't like being babied unless I'm sick and then my wife can baby me. But I felt like I needed to share some of the things that I have experienced personally, because it's always the things that go on inwardly that are the biggest battles. When I was working in my previous employer, or at my previous employer, which is a mental health facility, there were a lot of times that I would get held over to different shifts, or that I would even volunteer for extra shifts. And let me tell you, there were times where maybe I got home because I got held over by the needs of the hospital, and I would go home and get anywhere between 4 to 6 hours of sleep, only to pop up and need to go back for my regular shift. Then there were other times where I would volunteer for extra shifts, and it would pretty much be the same thing, where I would get 4 to 6 hours of sleep. I would try to pop up, spend time with God in prayer, try to read His Word, get myself oriented for the day, even though I was dead tired. And then to add on top of that, I would volunteer sometimes and put in for extra shifts on my day off. Now, with all that work, would I complain? Yeah, I would complain. I'd be dead tired sometimes. The one day off perhaps that I got, if I worked on my day off, I would probably be in bed at least for a little bit extra, but then I would pop up and do things that I knew I needed or wanted to do, such as I used to do live stream Bible studies on Facebook, and I would try to be faithful to that as much as possible, because it was a burden that God laid on my heart. And what that means, for those who may not understand, is there was this desire to help people understand things that God had helped me to understand, not in isolation, but in community with a church family, through my pastor, through my first pastor, through my current pastor. And so would I complain, things like that? Yeah, but was I glad to see the payoff of all those extra hours? I definitely was. Now, at this point, I have been living for God with God's help in Jesus Christ. I've been living for God since 2009, December of 2009, more specifically. And since that time, in experiencing God's supernatural presence and Him cultivating these different desires to do different things and helping Him build up His influence, His kingdom within our current age and world and society. Over the years, I have desired to do different things, outreach ministry, or people have pointed certain things out or invited me to be part of different things, such as praise team, choir, different things. And sometimes I was nervous at other times, or the other flip side of that more would have been that it was an exciting new thing to take part in. Now, last year, my praise team leader, he began putting me more on the schedule week in and week out. And I loved it and I appreciated it to be utilized, to be able to be a part of it on a consistent basis. And this is where I don't want you to tell him what I'm about to tell you, is that after a while, I began to kind of feel used. Now, when we talk about being used by God, sometimes I can actually have a very bad connotation, depending on our background, depending on our concept of being used. Perhaps we feel like people that manipulate us and they use us. And that is not at all what God does to those of us who are willing to do the things that He has called, invited us, and equipped us, and is equipping us to do. But during this season, I did begin to feel used, manipulated. And the biggest, one of the hardest things to do, it seems sometimes, and I'm just sharing my heart, is that sometimes it feels like it's so hard for us to be honest with God about how we're feeling. and we hold it against God, or we don't tell him, or we silently hold it against God. We hold it against those of us who are leading us and guiding us, our praise team leaders, our pastor, and we just hold it there. We hold it like a wound, or like a growing wound, or a sickness, and we're just like, I'm okay. Outwardly we try to put on a good face, but inwardly we're struggling with feeling manipulated. And so on the one hand, I had my job working me like crazy, or I was putting myself to work like crazy. And then on the other hand, I had opportunity for God to put me to work, and for me to work in the field and in the area and develop the things He's trying to develop within me. Now, one thing I didn't take into consideration until later, perhaps my wife pointed it out, was that there were some changes that had taken place within the praise team and its members, and the part that I sing, which is a tenor part, there were some changes. We didn't have as much support for the tenor part, and it was me, my praise team leader, and one or two others. And when you're down to only a few, you have to utilize them on a more consistent basis. Me, however, I wasn't even thinking like that. All I was feeling like, I'm being used, I'm being manipulated, things like that. And I can remember trying to hold it to myself. But it was when I began to, not even in my personal morning devotional time, not even in my personal nightly devotional time, which you absolutely need to have set aside as much as possible consistent devotional times. It was when I began to share that burden with God, or that feeling of being used, or feeling like just burning out. It was then that the Lord began to help me to see things. As I said, whether it was my wife sharing things with me, or just the Lord Jesus himself helping me to see what was going on in that season and in that situation. Now, to make a comparison, I have to do yard work at least every 2 weeks at my own house in order that the grass and the weeds, sometimes when I don't utilize and I don't put in the work I need to keep my yard together, the weeds grow, the grass grows like crazy, and invites more bugs and things like that. But as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, I have so many tools. I got a few different types of rakes, an iron rake, this kind of floppy type rake, more maybe for leaves. And then I have this different weeding tools. And I'm like, I wonder how tired my tools, how tired they get by being used. Or perhaps those who conduct lawn services and their lawnmower is working 2-3 times, 4 or 5 times a day. Perhaps they got weeding tools and different things. And I began to think, sometimes we look at God and we demean ourselves, or think that God demeans us, and that we're just like a tool, just like one of those yard tools. The lawnmower, and he's just working us with no compassion and no care, and that's all we are, is a tool, and being used in that way. And what I've realized is that's not the case in any way, shape, or form. What I also have realized is that having a family, being married, having kids, there's a lot more of my attention that it gets spread around. Give time to my wife, listen to her, share with her, listen to my kids, talk with them, try to find things to do with them, ministering to people outside of this place, spending time with people, just listening to them, getting to know them, talking to them, giving feedback. And what I realized is that so often we walk into a season where God utilizes us a lot, but what are we doing to maintain our strength, to maintain our motivation? This is why without a consistent relationship with the Lord, you're going to get burnt out. If you want to get in shape, I would ask you, what is it that you have to do to get in shape? Many people in our day, they're taking the shortcut, minus genetic factors and things like that. Many people don't want to put in the work. Many people would rather go get surgeries and different things. If you got medical conditions, totally understandable. But for those of us who live a sedentary lifestyle, all we're doing is sitting somewhere, we're flipping through our phone, we're just watching stuff. We're not active, we're not putting in the work, we're not putting in the reps. And yet we want to look good, we want to feel good, so we pop pills or we get surgeries. You know, people don't want to put in the work. But what I realize is it is through the work that my lawn looks good. It is through the work, the time being invested. Perhaps my wife, she more so does things in the house because she has kind of a flow that she has, and she can be very meticulous, for which I'm thankful for. But in order to keep the house clean on the inside and tip-top shape to where when people come over, you know, my wife thinks certain things are dirty and people come over and they're like, what are you talking about? That's because she's put in the time. When people come over, prayerfully our grass, our front yard, our backyard is in order, or if it's overgrown, it's because I haven't put in the time. I haven't put in the effort. I haven't put in the work that's needed. And so, in just talking about putting in the work, you know, if I want to be in good shape, I need to either do things, do some home workouts, go walking 30 minutes a day, like they recommend, 5 days a week, every day of the week if possible. I can't complain about me being unhealthy if I'm not doing the things I need to, if I'm not bettering my diet, getting rid of the processed sugars and taking the healthy sugars from fruits and things like that, eating good carbs instead of bad carbs, eating carbs that actually do things for my body instead of empty carbs. I can't complain about being unhealthy. I can't complain about being tired. I can't complain about not having energy if I'm not doing the things that I need to. But then, as I said with on the job, volunteering for these extra shifts or being mandated for these extra shifts, you know, one of the things that I needed to do in between the shifts was rest. I needed to take advantage of the time I had, because it is when we don't get rest, when we don't allow ourselves to rest, that's when burnout happens. When we don't take time for self, and I'm not talking about being overly selfish and me, like American culture teaches, or wherever you're at, hopefully culture is not like that for you. But so many people burn out because they don't take time for self. They so overbook themselves, or they're not managing their time well, which is overbooking, I guess. And instead of spending time, let's talk about in the natural, spending time just to relax, spending time just reading something we want to read, listening, learning, you know, just something leisurely, we fill up our time, whatever it is. And so we become burnt out because we don't allow our bodies to rest. We don't allow our brains have to rest. It has to get rest. If it doesn't get rest, you're damaging yourself. And so, you know, I allowed my job to work me, or I worked myself and worked myself. And yet I never complained about feeling used. Well, you know, there were some more internal things with management and things like that, but that's its own issues. But I would work and work, but then I'd be thankful for the payoff of putting in the time. And so in my season where I felt like I was just being used, the Lord helped me to see that He was developing within me dependability. He was helping me to take advantage of the time that I had. When I had time, would I keep my disciplines? Because spiritual disciplines benefit me spiritually. If I have a discipline of going to the gym, it's going to benefit me physically. If I have a discipline of eating right, it's going to benefit me inwardly, physically, biologically. But if I maintain my spiritual disciplines, then my soul and my spirit, which is where I'm going to get the majority of my mental and emotional energy from, the things I take part in, partake of, that is where I'm going to get my strength. That is where I'm not going to feel burnt out. And so in the long run, you know, do you think I would be a hypocrite to put in all this time on the job and, you know, maybe gripe to myself, but I still kept going when I was burnt out, when I was physically just tired, mentally tired, and kept going? Maybe took a day or two for myself when I needed to, but I kept going back. I kept showing up because there was something that I was getting in return, which was money for bills. But when I feel tired and things here, am I a hypocrite if I just give up on God, if I give up on his church, because I'm not maintaining myself, because I'm not maintaining my relationship, because I'm not maintaining my supernatural, spiritual, mental, emotional health? I mean, I don't know. You can give me feedback. One works me, and they're going to work me as much as they can work me for their benefit. God works me. God puts me in positions. God puts me in places and in opportunities for the benefit of others as well, but also to help me to grow, to help me to see things I can do more efficiently, to see how I can better manage my time, to see how I can better manage my time with my family and things like that. So one hand, one organization, one group of people works me to death. I volunteer to work for them. On the other hand, one has needs and God presents opportunities, and yet I will give up on God quicker than I will give up on my job. What do you think? Give me some feedback. I would definitely appreciate it. And let me tell you, if you feel that way, I would ask you, what are your spiritual disciplines? What is your relationship with God like? How much time do you consistently devote time to spend with him? Because we consistently devote time to spend on our phones. Every moment that we can, we spend on our phones. IG, Snapchat, YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is nowadays. But we find no time for God, and we find ourselves burnt out. I wonder why. But God says, if you will get your life in order, when you seek me with all of your heart, when you seek me with all of your desire, I will be found by you. And so when I put God first, and my wife and my family knows I am at my best for them, at my best for myself, at my best for my church family, at my best for my pastor, at my best for my praise team leaders, I am at my best when I stay connected to Jesus Christ in prayer, in fasting, in reading his word, in listening to the word that he gives my pastor or one of the ministers, listening to the words that he gives through one of the other saints that are prayerful and connected. Then I don't burn out, because he gives me the encouragement that I need. And so I'll let you share what you think. Am I a hypocrite just because I feel burnt out on the one hand, or almost burnt out, or tired, or feel used? Because in reality, the Lord has helped me to grow from that season. I've tried to be more consistent for my pastor from that season. I tried to be more consistent for my praise team leaders from that season, tried to be more supportive, knowing that it's just a season. But it was God, through me staying connected to him, that gave me the strength I needed to make it through that season. So stay connected, stay prayerful, stay connected through prayer, stay connected through fasting if you're able to, stay connected through his word, whether you're reading or you're listening to an audio Bible, because I know people have different literacy levels because of the education system here. And don't feel bad if you can't read his word. First century Christians, most of them were illiterate and they couldn't read, and so they had God's word read to them and they retained it in their mind. So go back, listen to an audio Bible if you need to. Ask God, he'll help you to learn how to read. I've seen him do it with different people in my life, those that are close to me, those that are not as close, but I still know what God has done, what they have shared that God has done. So don't get burnt out, and yet don't give up on God, but you will fully entertain something that is not godly, that is not helping you, and it just brings comfort in your humanity, in your natural mind, and it doesn't it doesn't motivate you to stay in the fight, to stay in the race. Because we are in a war, and the majority of the war is the war of ideals. God said one thing to Adam, Satan said something else to Eve, and the battle was on. And so I want to say, whose voice are you listening to? Is it a voice that's going to cause you to be hypocritical? Or is it a voice that is encouraging you to keep pressing on? It is encouraging you to connect with God, to spend time with him, to learn to listen to his voice, to be faithful to the church he's put you in, to be faithful and being a witness to him in this broken world? Or are you caving in to your own wants and your own desires? Because when I do that, it hurts me, it hurts my wife, it hurts my children, it hurts our church, and I already know what it is to be broken, and I'm not trying to go back. Give me your feedback. And until the next one, may you allow the Lord to lead you, to guide you, to shape you, and to mold you, and to help you to be all He's created you to be. God bless you. In Jesus' name.